grow. It might hurt, but whoever really grew in a comfortable situation.
But most people, when they make that sacrifice, they don't see that sacrifice to the end. They don't make it to the end to see the reward of their sacrifice.
Right.
So
how do you do that?
That's where you gotta believe.
And patient.
You gotta believe that the sacrifice was worth it. If you don't believe that your sacrifice was worth it, then you giving up. You know, short of the goal line.
Right. Like that meme where you got the dude digging at the wall, and he gives up and turned around, and my man got like the little,
he got like 2 more hits,
little thin piece, couple more hits, he made it, and he turned around, and the other dude was still charging all the way through, about to get that goal. So.
And that's what it be. A lot of times, a lot of people give up before they actually achieve the accomplishment or the reward of their sacrifice.
Right.
And you got to understand that in everything that you do, first of all, I want to tell everybody, man, and everything that we talk about is just not about business. This is about everything that we talk about. You can apply it to everyday life. It's just not about business. You can apply it to your relationship. You can apply it to self developing. You can apply it to business. You could apply it to your children, your household. You can apply it to everything, man, because it's all tied into one, and it's going to make you better. So the sacrifice that you make, and no matter what it is, the sacrifice that you make, one is your payment. I spoke about this at our last seminar over at Widener. That your sacrifice is your payment. I got a mentor. He always told me that you're gonna pay a price, you're gonna pay it in advance, and you ain't gonna get a discount for it. So that's what your sacrifice is. And sacrifice is not just money. Sacrifice could be time. Sacrifice could be effort. It could be energy. Sacrifice could come in many different forms. Whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, the sacrifice is going to be different.
Right.
So you got to remember that some sacrifices is going to require money. Some sacrifices is going to require money and time. Some sacrifices is just going to require just your energy of you applying yourself every day to it.
Speaking to the mic more. They saying the mic is low.
Can you hear me now? So the sacrifice, man, is going to come in many different forms, many different shapes. But you got to be willing to make the sacrifice. If you're not willing to make the sacrifice, then there's no way that you can expect a reward from it. I told the story. I made the sacrifice when I started Jrkickz. I took $1,000 that I didn't personally have, and I put it into this company. And every time that I made money, I put it back into the company. And I just kept, putting the money back into the company. And even, points where I got to where as though I didn't have the money in the bank account, didn't know how I was going to make the next, move. I didn't know how I was going to, generate another dollar to invest back into the company. I still had to stay with it. But you got to get to that point, like you just believe that you're gonna make it. You believe that regardless of what you're going through, that you're gonna see it to the end, and that it's gonna be worth it. The sacrifice is gonna be worth it. The reward is gonna pay out, and it's gonna be everything that you thought it was gonna be. So you got to be willing to make that sacrifice, man, in order for you to see the reward at the end.
So that's cool for somebody that their reward is something tangible. But what about the people before they get their idea developed, right? Like you thinking on something abstract. You just got this feeling inside that you want to do something better or do something more, because that's kind of how entrepreneurship is started with other people. Like me, for example, right? So when I was first growing up, like I would always think to myself, like when I got older, I wanted to have a job where I could have a suit and carry a briefcase, right? That was my thing. So whatever that job might have been, as long as it looked like that was my idea of where I wanted to get to. And in order for me to get there, I knew a couple things I had to do.
That's an expensive lifestyle.
I mean, not necessarily, because there's people that work at Wells Fargo that wear a suit. And
I'm just saying to be able to afford
it. Their job is like on the line.
Yeah,
some of it.
All the time.
Some of it. But like whatever that looked like, my thing was just I wanted to get there. So my sacrifices as I grew up, I was like, all right, look, I need to do something differently than what I'm doing right now, because by the time I was a teenager and I got out of high school, I really didn't have no direction in my life. I knew I wanted to get to where I wanted to get. I didn't quite know what that was and what it looked like, but I knew I needed to leave to go do it so I can grow, get uncomfortable, right? So that was my thing where I joined the Marine Corps. And that was a whole different kind of sacrifice that I have ever experienced in my life, right? So you got that sacrifice, but I was fighting through. And the only reason I was fighting through was because I knew I needed to get somewhere. So what would you say, like, for a person that's in that place where they don't really quite necessarily know where they're going, they don't know how they're going to get there? What you think about that?
Honestly, that's the first thing you got to do. You got to figure out what it is that you want to do. You ain't necessarily got to know how you're going to get there, but you got to know what it is that you want to do.
So defining your goals.
That's first. Grab a pen and piece of paper, start writing everything down. Just jot down everything that come to your mind, good or bad. And then after you go jot it down, read back over it and then start checking the things off that you're not 100% sure of.
Mm-hmm.
You start, like they say, you start law of averages. You start, taking things off of the sheets, and then you start looking at it and saying, all right, I'm more focused on saying yes to these things and no to these things. I'm kind of not really sure about these things, and you start checking them off. And then by the time you start checking those things off, you'll come to one or two things that you see that you're really, passionate about, that you serious about, that you really would, see yourself doing in the near future. But that's the first thing. You got to define what it is that you want to do. You ain't necessarily got to know how you're going to get there, but you got to know at least what it is that you want to be trying to get to. If you want to be a nurse, if you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, an entrepreneur, a business owner, you can't just say I want to own a business, but you don't know what type of business you want to own.
Right.
I mean, if you want to be a nurse, you got to know what type of nurse you want to be. An LPN, RN,
Well, that ain't necessarily true. Yeah. You could do that based off of your timing. Like, you could be like, well, I don't got time to go to school for 4 years because I got responsibility.
But I never met a female that didn't know what type of nurse she wanted to be in. I mean, like, what type of nurse she wanted to be. Either she's saying, listen, I'm going to school to be an RN or I'm going to be an LPN. I ain't never met a female that said they wanted to be a nurse that didn't know what type of nurse they was trying to be.
That's fair.
So you still,
I gotta hear the data on that one though.
I mean, I'm saying you still define it of what it is that you want to do.
Right.
You kind of don't just leave it up in the air and say, all right, I'll figure that out when I get there.
Right.
I mean, because now you're wasting time. I mean, energy and money. But if you know going in what you going for, then you can focus solely on that.
Right.
I mean, now you know where you putting your efforts at, you putting your energy into, and that's where your whole sole focus is. Now, I think, what is it, an RN is higher than an LPN.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, because I'm not really sure, but I believe I'm right.
RN, you gotta go to school longer though.
So what I'm saying is if you say, all right, I mean, I want to be an LPN because you don't really want to do the schooling, but once you get an get to be an LPN and you decide, maybe I want to go a little longer and get the RN and just, max all the way out. You got the LPN, whatever you getting paid to be an LPN, but now you go back and get the RN, now that's a different story.
Right.
But at least you knew going in where you wanted to, you wanted to, focus your time and energy and effort in.
So now what if the person is saying like, well, I don't got the time to be able to go to school? How do they decide to come to that sacrifice? Because that's another sacrifice.
I think that's an excuse. For me personally, man, I think you put time into what it is that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, for real, look at me, look at you, look at Ron. Look at all of us in this room. We both sit on the board.
Right.
We both run a company. We both got families. We
Yep.
both got significant others.
Yep.
We both work full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And we here right now at 8 p.m.
Right.
educating the people.
Right.
We got events after events. So I think you apply your time to where it is that you really want to, be at and what you really want to do.
Well, it looked like the people agree with you as far as it being an excuse. So now if we understand it's an excuse, then you still stuck with this dilemma in your mind where you don't have the time. So I feel like that's where we could probably play in a little bit the time management. I went to this course one time. The gentleman's name is, I think it's Steve McClatchy. I'll correct the name and put it in the notes to make sure that you know. But one of the things that he talked about was sorting from the have-tos and the don't have-tos, right? So we got this long list of have-tos that's going to always be there. That's the stuff that's gonna be reoccurring. Like you gotta go to work, you gotta take out the trash, you gotta do all of those things, right? And then you got the other part of the don't have tos. And the way you balance this thing, because you want to take more stuff on your plate and be efficient, the way you balance it is doing some of those don't have tos. But those don't have tos are the things that we want to do, but we don't have to do it, right? Like going to the gym, or like you walk in the mornings, right? Or like me, my nerd, I like to learn, right? So I watch a documentary or read, and you like to play games, your video games. Like these are all these don't have tos that we got to do, and they tie it into this thing called sharpening the saw. Well, that could be tied into a thing called sharpening the saw, which is like it's the seventh habit of highly successful people. They got to make sure that in order for them to continue to cut down the trees in the woods, right, the saw got to be sharpened. You might say to yourself, I don't got time to sharpen the saw, but you got to think one step further. If you stop and sharpen the saw, once it's sharper, it's going to cut smoother. You're going to use less energy, right? And you're going to use less effort. You're going to be more efficient, right? So you tie that into life. When you do some of those don't have tos, you make the time for it. It comes back to time management. You put it in there. Put it on your schedule. This is my me time daily, where I'm going to do whatever my reflection is. You do whatever that thing is that you love to do. Sharpen the saw. Now you're more efficient. You'll get through your other tasks better. And once you start realizing how much time it is in a day, something like 86,200 seconds
that you
right,
actually waste.
that you actually waste, and you put it to good time, then you can find those times to do those things. That is the sacrifice, like going to school to learn your craft, right? Or like going away to learn something different, or putting your time into building your company, and that's kind of like how you get there. You manage those life skills. But it all starts with sharpening the saw, being more efficient, and time management. You got to put that stuff on your schedule, and you got to defend it like it's no other. You got to treat it the same way you would treat work. You're not going to be like, yo, I can't go to work today because I got to eat dinner, right? Like it's not going to get in the way. Or I can't go to work today because I got to go to the store and shop for these kids. Or I can't go to work. Like, you're not going to do that. The same way you wouldn't do that, the same way you got to put this stuff on your schedule for your own personal time.
But
and do whatever it is.
That rewinds back to to our seminar at Widener, and I said, you got to understand the difference between working and being busy. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of people think because they're busy, they're working. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times you can just congest your day of a bunch of things, and you're not actually working. You know, how much time do most people spend on social media? Right. You know, how much time do you spend actually talking to coworkers instead of actually doing your job? How much time do you actually do a bunch of things that you know that, is not productive, right, but you're still doing them right every day. Like today, I'm not cutting at the barbershop, but I'm on the phone with, different companies all day long calling, about sponsorships and everything. Absolutely. All day long. Because even though I'm not cutting here, don't mean I'm not working. Yeah. But I'm not, congesting my day and saying, oh, I'm working, but I'm just really busy. Right. You consuming your time by doing a bunch of unnecessary things. If you get those unnecessary things out of the way, you leave yourself a whole lot more time to be able to do things that actually can benefit you, to actually get further ahead in life. Yeah. Shout out to Bobby Dean, my homie Doc from the Marine Corps. He said that. He was saying, like, let's not act like timing is not an important thing, but that's how you tie it in. Doc, like Bree was saying, where he was sitting there cutting and on the phone calling these places, and I can attest to that because I'm on the way driving down to a service. I get a call from Bree. I'm literally, now if the cops are watching, don't give me no tickets. But I literally was holding the phone, the speakerphone in my hand, and driving down to a service. I got a funeral procession behind me because one of my guys, his pipe burst and had to go home. I had to take services. But I'm literally at work sitting here talking to Bree about it. It's the way you got to do it. It's a sacrifice. I think
time is the ultimate sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Because it's the only thing. It's the only thing in life that you can't get back.
Never. I say that all the time. No matter what happens, you can never get today back. Right. You can lose a car, lose a house. Lose a loved one, whatever. But you can't never get time back, man. Once today is gone, it's gone. You never get it back. So
today,
you have to,
tomorrow, yesterday. You can't get none of that back.
That's why you have to value time, because it's the most valuable thing that don't have a price to it. Right.
It's the most valuable thing.
Right.
Right.
It's the most valuable thing that don't have a price attached to it. So you
Everything
have to
else in
value-
life is a function of time.
Yeah,